They say nearly 1 in every 10 neighborhoods in America has reported some form of HOA fraud. That number might sound small at first, but when you realize it means tens of thousands of families are being scammed in the very place they thought was safe, the truth becomes terrifying. And nowhere was this more apparent than in the quiet community of Willow Creek Estates, a neighborhood that looked like the perfect slice of suburban life, until its homeowners discovered that their biggest threat wasn't crime or outsiders, but the very people elected to protect them. On paper, a homeowners association exists to keep a neighborhood thriving, clean and valuable. The rules are supposed to keep lawns trimmed, roads maintained, and property values high. Residents pay their monthly dues with the promise that money goes directly into the community. But what most people don't realize is how much power those board members hold behind closed doors. And in Willow Creek Estates, that power was being abused in ways no one could have imagined. It started with something small. A letter slid under David Miller's front door, telling him his monthly HOA dues had gone up by $50 for landscape improvements. David, a software engineer who worked long nights and cherished his weekends, didn't think much of it at first. He assumed maybe the neighborhood was planting new trees or fixing the irrigation system. But a month later, Sarah Johnson, a school teacher who had lived there for over a decade, mentioned that she too was being charged extra fees, this time for security upgrades. Oddly enough, no new cameras appeared. No new lights were installed, and not a single improvement could be seen. The board president, Linda Hayes, was a well-dressed, polished woman in her early 50s. She smiled at every meeting, spoke about community pride, and reminded residents that every dollar collected was for their benefit. But behind that charming exterior, Linda was orchestrating something much darker. Along with the HOA treasurer, Mark Daniels, she began creating fake invoices, phony contracts with landscaping companies, fabricated bills for security services, even forged documents for playground repairs that never happened. At first, no one noticed. People are busy, distracted, trusting. And in neighborhoods like Willow Creek, the HOA often operates unchecked. But slowly, suspicions grew. David began asking questions. "If we're paying thousands for landscaping," he asked at a monthly meeting, "why does the park still look abandoned? Why are the sprinklers broken?" Linda gave a rehearsed smile, brushed off his concern, and shifted the conversation. But in Sarah's heart, a seed of doubt was planted. Residents soon realized their fees had nearly doubled in less than 2 years. Promises of new playground equipment, fresh paint for the clubhouse, and a community swimming pool resurfacing project never materialized. All they saw were cracked sidewalks, broken benches, and weeds creeping through the park. The money was disappearing, and no one could explain where it went. Some neighbors whispered about it over backyard fences. Others speculated quietly in the school parking lot. But very few dared to speak up publicly. Because Linda wasn't just charming, she was intimidating. Those who questioned too loudly found themselves slapped with violation notices for petty things, a trash bin left out an extra day, a small patch of weeds, or even a slightly faded fence. It was clear that crossing the HOA president came with consequences. Still, David and Sarah refused to stay silent. They started keeping their own records. Every notice, every new fee, every promise that never came true, they documented it all. And when they quietly compared notes, they realized something shocking. In just 18 months, Willow Creek Estates had collected over $250,000 in special assessments, money that should have gone back into the neighborhood. Yet the only new addition anyone could point to was a single park bench, cheaply made and already falling apart. The betrayal was personal. Families who worked double shifts, retirees living on fixed incomes, young couples saving every penny to build a future, all were handing over money they believed was building their community. Instead, that money was being funneled into the pockets of those entrusted to protect it. Then came the turning point. One late evening, while reviewing paperwork slipped into his mailbox by mistake, David discovered an invoice for community security services. The amount? Nearly $15,000. The company listed on the invoice? It didn't exist. A quick online search revealed no phone number, no website, not even a business license. It was a ghost company, and suddenly everything clicked. He rushed to Sarah's house with the document in hand, his voice trembling as he showed her the proof. "They're stealing from us," he whispered, his hands shaking. Sarah looked at the paper, her face draining of color. "This isn't just mismanagement," she said. "This is fraud." Word began to spread, carefully at first. A few trusted neighbors were shown the documents, then a few more. The whispers grew louder, more confident. And for the first time, residents started to believe they weren't crazy, that their suspicions were real. They had been scammed by the very board members they had voted for. The atmosphere in Willow Creek Estates shifted. Meetings that were once casual turned heated. Residents demanding answers while Linda and Mark tried to maintain control. But their polished smiles no longer worked. The evidence was mounting and people wanted the truth. And that truth would soon erupt into the open, leading to a confrontation that would tear the neighborhood apart. The night of the monthly HOA meeting arrived. And for the first time in years, nearly every household in Willow Creek Estates showed up. Folding chairs lined the community clubhouse, the air thick with tension. David sat in the back, clutching a folder stuffed with documents, while Sarah sat near the front, her jaw tight with determination. Everyone knew tonight would be different. Linda Hayes, polished as ever, opened the meeting with her usual rehearsed warmth. She spoke about community, spirit, about the importance of trusting leadership, and how tough decisions sometimes meant temporary sacrifices. But before she could finish, David stood up. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded in his chest. "Linda," he said, holding up the paper, "how do you explain this?" He walked to the front, placing the fake invoice on the table for all to see. The room fell silent. Eyes darted between the board members and the document. Mark Daniels, the treasurer, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Linda smiled thinly, brushing it off as a clerical mistake. But then Sarah stood. She raised her own stack of papers, months of documented lies, broken promises, and suspicious charges. "This isn't a mistake," she said firmly. "This is theft." The room erupted. Neighbors shouted, waved their own notices, and demanded answers. For the first time, Linda's composure cracked. Her voice rose defensively, claiming the accusations were baseless, that residents didn't understand the complexity of HOA finances. But the more she spoke, the more the crowd turned against her. The pressure didn't stop there. David and Sarah took the documents to an attorney, Carla Ruiz, a woman known in Phoenix for taking on corrupt organizations. After reviewing the evidence, she confirmed what everyone feared. The HOA board had been siphoning money into shell companies for years. The total? Nearly $500,000. Carla advised immediate legal action. With her guidance, the residents filed a class action lawsuit, not only against Linda and Mark, but against every board member who had signed off on fraudulent expenses. What followed was a storm that shook Willow Creek to its core. Local news stations caught wind of the story. Cameras showed up on front lawns, reporters knocked on doors, and headlines splashed across the evening news. HOA fraud exposed, residents scammed out of hundreds of thousands. Linda, once the untouchable face of the community, now found herself surrounded by microphones and flashing cameras. Her smile was gone, replaced by cold silence. Mark Daniels tried to vanish, avoiding neighbors, skipping meetings until eventually, subpoenas forced him to face the consequences. The legal battle dragged on for months, but residents refused to back down. In court, the paper trail was undeniable. Fake invoices, forged contracts, missing funds, all tied back to Linda and Mark. The jury's decision was swift. Guilty of fraud and embezzlement. Both were sentenced to prison, ordered to repay hundreds of thousands in restitution. But even with justice served, the scars in Willow Creek Estates ran deep. Trust had been shattered. Families who once waved to each other over picket fences now carried suspicion in their eyes, wondering how they had let the betrayal go unnoticed for so long. Yet out of that darkness came something unexpected. The community, once fractured, began to rebuild, not just their finances, but their sense of unity. New leaders were elected, chosen not for their charm, but for their integrity. Every expense was posted publicly, every decision open for discussion. Residents who had once felt powerless now had a voice. David and Sarah, once dismissed as troublemakers, were hailed as heroes. They had risked retaliation, stood against intimidation, and ultimately saved their neighborhood from collapse. When asked later why they fought so hard, Sarah's answer was simple: because home should mean safety, not fear, and no one should profit from stealing our peace of mind. The story of Willow Creek Estates spread far beyond Arizona. Across the country, homeowners watched in shock, realizing that what happened there could happen anywhere. Other neighborhoods began scrutinizing their own HOAs, demanding transparency, asking hard questions. The ripple effect was undeniable, and so the scandal of Willow Creek became more than just a local crime. It became a warning, a reminder that power unchecked is power abused, and that even the most charming smile can hide corruption. If you live in an HOA, maybe it's time to look closer at where your money is really going, because sometimes the greatest danger to your home isn't outside your walls. It's sitting right at the head of the board table. So, tell us, have you ever had a bad experience with an HOA? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about how to protect your rights as a homeowner, don't miss our next video on community, advocacy, and fighting back against abuse of power. Because when it comes to your home, knowledge isn't just power. It's protection.